Hello everybody and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. Just FYI, this is the last week in 2019 I'll be doing video clips, so we have a broadcast today and one on Thursday and then a little bit of time off. So first of all, some announcements. First of all, we're still shipping cookies. $19.95 includes shipping any place in the continental United States. We can ship to Canada and other places. The shipping cost is a little bit different, but marvelous cookies. They're gluten-free, healthy, organic, beautiful gift. Everybody who I sent them to is calling and thanking me for not sending them sweaters and tchotchkes, but something that the whole family can enjoy. So if you want to order cookies, pampopper@msn.com. Just email me and we'll take care of it. Why and how to withdraw from psychiatric drugs we offer once a year through our school. It starts in January. And it's for either people who want a really in-depth look at this whole situation and what it entails, or for practitioners ranging from family doctors, even clergy and attorneys have taken this course. So it's taught live through interactive teleconference, and then there are a couple dozen online videos created by Dr. Peter Breggin. The course was created with Dr. Peter Breggin, but it includes a huge video library of Dr. Breggin addressing a lot of the topics, and I think that you would be astounded at how much you'll learn. So it's great for health professionals, family practice docs, counselors, mental health professionals, social workers. If you're an internist or an OB-GYN or you're doing anything healthcare related or just working with people who have problems, this is a wonderful course to take. Again, email me if you're interested, pampopper@msn.com. We're introducing 10 new courses next year. First one up will be vaccines, starts in February. I've got the first 3 courses scheduled, so you'll be able to look online shortly and see what our schedule is. But we have some wonderful package offers in December, and you can qualify for an additional $100 to $599 off. And if you're curious about that and you want to know how you could get some tuition credits from us, email me at pampopper@msn.com. All right, so I decided that what I would do today is I would, first, I always respond to comments, and I think it's important to do that. Sometimes it's just more than I can write, or a lot of you seem to have the same thing on your mind, and so I answer questions. And then some of the issues that you've brought up in terms of comments on the YouTube channel have been issues that I think are important, like medical malpractice and the role of insurance companies in the mess. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. And I just want to start with responding to the complaints that some of you have, hoping that there's some perspective here. So many of you complain that the links to the studies and the articles are not in the video clips themselves. All right, so the video clips are free. My newsletter is free. If you want access to the articles and the library, you have to pay for that. And so when some of you get nasty about this, here's how this gets perceived at our office. It's like, you're not doing enough free stuff for me. Well, we're not obligated to do anything free for you, for one thing. And I don't think when you go into the grocery store and they give you a sample of something, you don't bark at people and say, how come I can't take a whole package of it out of the store? I don't want just a bite. Well, everybody seems to understand that you get some stuff free and have to pay for other stuff. So please have some compassion for us and our staff here. Some of you scream at the staff when you call here. Some of you complain because I'm reading. I don't know, maybe you guys don't watch the news, but newscasters are reading from a teleprompter. We're not quite that high tech here. I'm reading from an actual piece of paper so that I don't just ramble on and I make the points that I'm supposed to make. So sorry about that. I don't know what I can do about that. Many of you respond with, well, here's my situation and what should I do? And the YouTube comment section is not the place for you to get some advice about what you should do about your own healthcare situation. This is general information, and we can help you with that if you want to become a member and you want to consult with us. We do that, but you do have to become a member. And I don't think that you should not listen to anybody who would be willing to give you healthcare advice through the comment section of YouTube. I'm just saying, you don't want to do business with people like that. And then many of you, when I did the couple of the last couple of video clips, said, well, on that one about behavior, inflammation and behavior, you didn't tell the whole story. You didn't get into the causes of inflammation and how diet plays a role. The video was about the role of inflammation in thinking, psychological issues, and behavior. That's what it was about. I can't tell the whole story in these videos. The whole story about inflammation, I actually have a 45-minute lecture with reference slides that tell the whole story about inflammation. But if every Tuesday and Thursday I told the whole story about anything I'm talking about, the videos would be 12 hours long, nobody'd watch. Of course, some of you who want free stuff would be excited, but most people would just not watch. Part of the appeal here is in a few minutes, Tuesdays and Thursdays, you can get an awful lot of information from us. Going on, some of you ask, where do I get, where does Pam get her theories? And if you disagree with something that I say, well, it's just one person's opinion. I want to be really crystal clear about what we're doing here. I don't have theories and opinions when it comes to healthcare. I'm reporting news. And so please don't turn into a snowflake who can't tolerate news contrary to what you've already made up your mind about. I mean, some of you are so hostile, you really kind of give the impression that your mind is made up and you'd really not like to be confused with facts, and that's really unfortunate. So let's grow up a little bit, let's learn to digest and process information and change our minds when it's appropriate to do so. I have, over the last 25 years, I remember a time a couple decades ago when I used to say something foolish, like if you're really depressed and not functioning, maybe a psychiatric drug would help you for a while. I would never say something like that now. I now recognize I was wrong. And I could tell you a lot of other situations too. So I think we have to, we don't want to be so open-minded, we're flopping in the breeze out there, ready to change our mind anytime somebody says something that's a little bit different. But the other side of it is you also don't want to be closed-minded and unwilling to consider the idea that you could be wrong about something. And certainly you can tell me that you think I'm wrong about something without being hostile about it. And once again, to be crystal clear, I'm not giving you opinions, I'm reporting the news. I don't have theories, I'm reporting the news. Now, to get into some of the substantive questions that you've been asking, insurance companies, some of you, when we were talking about the statin drugs, lots of comments on that. I mean, we had like 800 comments on statin drugs, and you might think, well, there certainly aren't that many approved. Well, so many of these I can't approve because of language or, on and on. But anyway, this is the thing with insurance companies. I don't have any great love for them. But it's important for you to understand why insurance companies aren't our biggest problem. Part of the issue with insurance companies is that they have been asked to pay for the excesses and incompetence associated with medicine for years. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. One is an easy one, Avastin. It was a drug that was originally approved for the treatment of colon cancer. It's really not very good. In spite of that, it got approved for the treatment of breast cancer. And by the way, the day that Fred von Eschenbach at FDA signed that order, the Genentech stock went up a few $1 billion. But here's the thing with Avastin. It costs $100,000 and it doesn't prolong life for a single day, not one day. Now, you're an insurance company and you're a for-profit business and there's nothing the matter with that. But think about the consequences of putting out $100,000 for patients and it does absolutely no good, doesn't change anything. Another one much more egregious, and a lot of this type of thing that I'm going to tell you about happened at Duke University. It's one of the reasons I'm not very impressed with this institution or that institution. So when somebody writes to me and says, oh, but this doctor at Duke or Johns Hopkins or Harvard says this or that, the doctor may be right or wrong, but the pedigree doesn't say anything because there's plenty of bad stuff that goes on in these places. Well, this all goes back a couple decades ago when a South African doctor published an article in a medical journal claiming that he gave high-dose chemotherapy combination-type drugs, and the goal or the objective with the combination of chemotherapy drugs was to minimize the side effects of each one, because they all have different side effects. And then when he brought women to the brink of death who had breast cancer using this strategy, he would do a bone marrow transplant, and supposedly it was better for women. And he published an article in a medical journal with data indicating that it was true. Well, insurance companies didn't want to pay for it, and because it was new and experimental, and so women started suing their insurance companies, and they won in court. The court said, you have to pay for it. At the end of the day, here's what happened. The South African doctor made it up. He didn't have any data to support it. The peer-reviewed journals, there's serious problems with them. You've heard me talk about that quite a bit. So billions and billions of dollars got spent on this useless treatment. What's worse, 9,000 women died, or we could say they were killed by this treatment. 30,000 were injured, some of them permanently disabled. We have a few members here who went through that process. The best thing that could have happened is for the insurance companies to have won in court. because some of those women who sued and won the right to get this treatment, if we could even call it that, died of the treatment. You might say, well, they might have died of breast cancer anyway, but there's a whole big difference between dying of what the disease you have versus being killed by the healthcare profession. So insurance companies, like I said, I have no great love for them, but they have been asked to pay for nonsense, the excesses of the medical profession for years and years and years. And sometimes I think they are right to say, no, we're not going to pay for it, or we need a lot more documentation, or we would pay for this but not that. So assuming that the doctor's always right to order it and the insurance companies are the bad guy, not necessarily what is true. Now, many people wrote about this. Some people think that people are too stupid to become informed. You need to rely on doctors. One person actually wrote, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but do you think some stupid blue-collar worker, that was part of the quote, can understand health better than their doctor? Well, the first thing I'm going to say is that type of elitist attitude, assuming everybody who works in a factory is too stupid or is more stupid than you are. I don't know, maybe you have 5 PhDs and you think you're the it girl or something, but I don't like this type of thing. We don't tolerate that kind of language here, that kind of disrespect for people. I find it offensive, obnoxious. But based on the ineptitude in medicine, first of all, I've never met anybody I couldn't teach how to be an informed consumer. And based on the ineptitude in medicine, we all better be informed, regardless of how much education you do or don't have or where you work, because I've been talking for 10 years on this YouTube channel and backing it up with evidence that shows that doctors are doing things every day that are excessive and hurt people. Did you hear what I just said before we moved on to this topic? You better be informed. Some doctors have said, well, you know, if you want to play medicine, if you want to play doctor and make decisions, go to medical school. It's insulting. I mean, can you imagine asking your financial planner or your accountant a question or suggesting that you'd like to do something different, and the response would be, oh, if you want to be a financial advisor, go get a finance degree, but until then, you better do what I say. I mean, we wouldn't tolerate this from people we buy stuff from in any other field. And the premise here is that we shouldn't tolerate it from people in the medical field. There's no excuse for disrespect, ever. I mean, we all do it from time to time. Most of us apologize when we do it because that's the right thing to do. But some people are so tone deaf they don't even realize how disrespectful they are. And some of you say that you don't have the time. I get this all the time. Well, you know, you're proposing that I take your classes and read and research and all that sort of thing. Well, if you don't invest time in things that are important, you're going to pay the consequences. And people don't do this in any other area. I mean, I have never been to somebody's house where it's raining inside, and the person said, oh, yeah, I know it's raining inside, but I'm so busy I don't have time to call a roofer. I've never heard anybody say that. I've never watched somebody drive on a flat tire for 6 months and say, well, I know this isn't good, but you don't know how many kids I got playing soccer these days. I just can't get around to taking care of it. People find time to take care of things and to pay attention to things that they want to pay attention to. And so if you don't want to pay attention to this, you're going to pay the consequences of not paying attention to it. And claiming that you don't have time, I'm going to talk a little bit about my mother in a little bit because I think that she has some relevance to this situation. But my mother didn't have time to pay attention to her health, and she spent the last 15 years with nothing but time on her hands while she was in hospitals and nursing homes and back and forth to the ER. Lots of time. I don't think that's where you want to end up. Here's another one. Malpractice has ruined medicine. A couple of you wrote about that. Not so. First of all, read the report Why the Medical Malpractice Crisis Persists Even When Malpractice Insurance Premiums Fall. You can read that online. And then the new report just came out this week that physicians feel that 71% of the time malpractice suits are filed because patients don't understand the risks and benefits of the care that they're getting. And also that most doctors and most specialties, the same report says, feel that their malpractice premiums are reasonable. But the earlier thing, the business about doctors thinking that the reason for the lawsuits is that patients aren't properly informed, that makes my point. Not only is it bad for patients when they're not properly informed, it's bad for doctors too. It's good that they're being punished for not having these informed discussions. Maybe that's what it's going to take to get doctors to sit down, learn this stuff, learn to have the right types of conversations with their patients. To a certain extent, it's not their fault. They're not taught to do it or how to do it in medical school. But we can only excuse that so much, because when something isn't working out so well, it is your responsibility to figure out what to do about it. But my goal before I leave this planet is going to be to see that criminal penalties are assessed for health professionals who don't have the right kinds of informed discussions with their patients, because that's what they did in the mortgage business. And if you can go to jail for misleading people about a mortgage, you should go to jail for misleading people about something with terrible health consequences. For example, the women who got killed with that miserable therapy for which there was no evidence. There are lots of laws. People should be in prison for doing that. Screaming at me about your opinions. All right, so had a nurse who wrote about how she believes and how much she believes in mammography. Well, I have a really strong spiritual grounding, but what bothers me is the use of faith and belief in medicine. It's not appropriate. I mean, this is a science-based endeavor, and we have science. We don't have to. We don't practice faith-based. We should not be practicing faith-based medicine, is I guess the point I'm trying to make. So what I invited her to do is to send me the patient handouts. This is what we tell our members to do, by the way. Ask for handouts. You really want me to have a mammogram? Please pull out those studies that document that this is going to reduce my risk of dying of breast cancer. And one of the things that our members tell us, and I just kind of smile, is that very seldom does somebody reach right over in the drawer and say, oh, I've got them right here, take this home and look at it. And so think about the insanity of a person who gives out a recommendation to do something every day, all day long, can't put her hands or his hands on a single piece of paper with any evidence documenting it. Speaks volumes. And I've even had members who said, I'll tell you what, when that happened, it really did make me understand I need to look at all of this a little bit differently. And then some people, many people actually, wrote comments to the effect, something to the effect of, well, you know, the problem with medical system is that most people are just too lazy and they don't want to change their habits and they just want pills. That's not true. Doctors aren't having the right conversations with their patients. And I mentioned I would talk about my mother for just a moment. My mother was a very brilliant, college-educated woman who became a millionaire in her own right and her own business. And the reason I'm telling you that is not to brag about my mom. I actually didn't have a very good relationship with her. But I want to let you know she wasn't a stupid blue-collar worker like some of the, that just still aggravates me. I don't like elitism, by the way. I don't. My family, for all their faults, never behaved that way toward anybody. But anyway, very intelligent, educated, successful person who began to get sick and had some back problems, and she got sucked into the medical mill, and doctors gave her drugs and more drugs and did procedures, and she was in and out of hospitals and rehab facilities after shoulder surgery and this and that. The last 15 years of her life were horrific. I wouldn't wish them on anybody, not my worst enemy. And she died 20 years earlier than she should have. Longevity runs in my family. In spite of the fact that they don't all take such good care of themselves sometimes, but she should have lived a lot longer. And the reason why I'm so angry about it, she died of medical care. She never wanted to listen to me. We didn't have that kind of relationship, and she wouldn't listen to me about anything else either, to be fair. But if a doctor in a white coat had said to her, Eleanor, you know, these drugs that I'm giving you for pain and that sort of thing, they're terrible. Let me show you the side effects. Let me show you what would happen if you changed your diet and you lost weight and you started exercising and you didn't smoke cigarettes and you didn't drink so much alcohol. I don't know what she would have done, but I will tell you this. She would have at least taken it seriously, because my mother grew up in a generation where doctors were worshipped. They're gods. She believed what they said. That's why she took the drugs and had the surgeries and spent 15 years in the medical mill before they finally killed her. And so my point here is that there are some people who are lazy and they just want pills and they don't want to do anything to improve themselves, but they're not being told how to. And if doctors would have the right kinds of informed discussions, a continuing theme in what we're discussing here, it would make a difference. It would have made a difference in my mother's case. I'm almost certain of it. One question that you guys had that I'll answer, a couple people asked about this. Well, how can you rig a double-blind placebo-controlled study? It's really easy, and I'll give you a couple of examples. Not necessarily, one of them is not double-blind, but it's a great example, and the other one is double-blind. Run-in periods, all right? That's one way to do it. And this happened with the psychiatric drugs, where they took all of the subjects and they got rid of the placebo responders before the trial started and the drug non-responders. So the trial was rigged to show that the drugs worked when they actually didn't end up working, as we found out later. Another thing is no real placebo. When the HPV vaccine was in clinical trials, very tiny percentage of the women, young girls and women who were in the trial got a saline placebo. There really wasn't a placebo. All of the placebo had aluminum in it, and so did the vaccine. So you had the same number of neurological damage episodes in both the placebo and the vaccine group, which gave the false impression that there was no problem with the vaccine, no more injuries with the vaccine than the placebo. Another thing is no real control group. Many studies I've seen that compare, for example, a high-fat with a low-fat diet, and they say, well, fat doesn't make any difference. The low-fat diet was 37% of calories from fat. Nobody promoting a low-fat diet that I know has ever thought that 37% of calories from fat was low-fat. So this is like, and I teach by analogy, some of you know. So let's say we're going to do a study, and we're going to put crash dummies in a car and hurl the car into a building at 90 miles an hour, and then see what the damage looks like. And we report that when a car hits a building 90 miles an hour, the evidence shows that all the people in the car would die. And then we repeat the experiment at 85 miles an hour, and the same result really happens. And then we report, it really doesn't matter how fast you're driving when you collide with something, results are always the same. It does matter. It's just a 5-mile difference doesn't matter. And so those are some of the ways that you can rig trials and studies to show the result that you've already decided that you're going to show. And it happens all the time. I mean, 95% of what's in medical journals is not reliable. It's a lot of what I talk about every Tuesday and Thursday. If you want to know more about this, I teach research and writing. It starts the last Tuesday in February. There are 10 classes. It's over in October. It's a class that will make you tear your hair out, but you will learn a ton from it. All right. So if you're interested in that or any of the other things that we do here, or finding out about the special discount you might qualify for or tuition credit, feel free to email me at pampopper@msn.com. So those are some topics I thought were important to address because too much to write, as you might imagine. I'm not a very good typist. I'd much rather talk than write, or talk than type. So hence I decided to address these things here. All right, as usual, if you're not a subscriber, hit the subscriber button, pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it, and I'll be back to you on Thursday with more news.